And Isaiah, like these men and women before you today, like our brother Arlo, look for you in a broken world. And like your prophet Isaiah, we too say, here am I, send me. These servants, Lord, sit here this afternoon with a broken heart. A community comes here this afternoon with a broken heart. And a family stands before you now here with a broken heart. As Rick did, we understand the power unto salvation is through your Son. Our hope is not in the eloquence of today's ceremony. Our hope is not in the power of prayer being offered today. Our hope is in your Son, Jesus Christ, whom you revealed in your word. Our hope is that you would use today for a mighty purpose. Meet us now and move in a mighty way for your glory. We pray this in Jesus' name, amen. John chapter 15, verse 13 says this: greater love has no one than this, that one laid down his life for his friends. You may be seated. Thank you.
I have a question before I begin. Do they allow firearms in here? You know, Jeff, I thank you for your wonderful prayer. I appreciate that very much. It is comforting to know that God can bring good out of evil in the midst of it and instead of it. And that's kind of what this service is meant to encourage us to consider. The wish of Rick, he mentioned it to me on more than one occasion, is that at his funeral, that there would be more laughter than tears. I don't know if we'll be able to accomplish that or not, but we will try to honor his wish. I'd like to give a few minutes to highlight the kind of person we all came to know as Rick Lopez, or as the department calls him, Arlo. Some of these things you may be aware of, some may have escaped your attention. For example, Rick was a leader, became evident in the companies he worked at, including Safeway. I didn't even know he worked at Safeway. I did not know that until last week. I had never known it. But he made his way into managerial positions so that he could be encumbered with more work, more responsibilities, and just a little bit more pay. Those who worked with him recalled to me his ability to lighten the mood in stressful situations, the quirky sense of humor of his that we all came to love. Rick was a very generous person with his time and with his resources. He was a giving person. He donated blood to the blood bank, volunteered for various children's charities, helped out around the church, serving as an advisor to our safety committee and helping with the grounds in any way he could find a way to be involved, helping someone navigate our steps or whatever it was, even if they were total strangers. Yes, and he was very generous with his money too. He single-handedly saved the Italian economy with the purchase of his Sicilian outdoor gourmet pizza grill. But ever after that grill, he made a pizza that I have never tasted anything like it before or since. He was the kind of person who always rooted for the underdog, as evidenced by the fact he was a lifelong, ardent Chicago Cubs fan. I think it was back in the 1800s when they won the World Series. He was so excited by their once-in-a-lifetime victory that he finally bought the fashion designer purse for his wife that she had been eyeing for a long time in his celebratory glee. Now, I can understand where Rick was coming from since he grew up in a state close to Illinois, but I am having trouble, Kim, understanding where your support for the Cubs franchise comes from. Was it the ball club or the handbag? It was One of Rick's finest qualities was his love for all of us and for you, his family. He literally lived each day like it could be his last. Kissing his wife goodbye in the morning was no mere formality for Rick. It was always potentially the last chance he would have to show love to you. Worthy example for us all to follow. It was this practice of his that taught me to deeply appreciate what all of our law enforcement face every day that they go to work. So thank you for your service and your sacrifice and what you live with every day to benefit us. Not to take our relationships for granted. I came across a verse last week, shortly after we heard that Rick had passed away. It's printed, I believe, on our program today. I think it captures well what Rick was all about. It's in John chapter 15 and verse 13, where it says, "Greater love," this is Jesus, "greater love has no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friends." And if you stop to think about it, that was Rick. And it dawned on me, no one took Rick's life. In his work every day, Arlo gave himself to his partners on the force and to the community he and all of you serve. And you simply cannot take what has been so freely given. Every day, he gave everything he had. As my baseball coach used to teach us players, leave it all on the field. One further characteristic I'd like to mention is perhaps his greatest, is Rick's faith. I don't have time to recount all the many examples that could be cited where Rick lived out his faith in front of us all in full view, but I will mention one because it illustrates perfectly the others. Rick was in the habit of reading his Bible daily, every morning. And on the morning of his death, he had his Bible marker, placed in Psalm 22, specifically the page in his Bible that starts with Psalm 22, verse 14. And before I read to you what Rick read on that morning of June 28, let me share a little insight into Psalm 22, 23, and 24. It is a literary unit. These three chapters belong together. There's a flow of thought that works through them. They were depictions in advance of the experiences that Jesus would have on the cross, in the grave, and in his resurrection and ascension into heaven. Psalm 22 predicted scenes that would take place when Jesus would one day die on the cross. It's dark, it's painful, but it moves into the 23rd Psalm, the famous shepherd psalm. Psalm 23 depicts scenes of his burial, where after passing through the valley of the shadow of death, he lies down in green pastures. And the story culminates in Psalm 24, depicting the scenes of his resurrection, Jesus' resurrection and ascension into heaven. For days, Rick had been troubled by something. It was weighing on his heart. He had been praying but not getting a clear sense of God's answer to him. There was a kind of foreboding, like a premonition of an approaching calamity. I don't know how far he read that morning, but he started reading in Psalm 22. Here are some of the verses he would have read. "I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax, it is melted within me. My strength is dried up like a pottery shard, and my tongue clings to my jaws. You have brought me to the dust of death. For dogs have surrounded me. The congregation of the wicked has enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. They look and stare at me. They divide my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. Those who are familiar with the story of Jesus know that this is a predication of what would happen to him. But that's Psalm 22. A little insight into the kind of person Rick was. He read this on the morning of his shooting. And that morning, Rick made a choice. Many in your line of work believe they could die in the line of duty. Rick may have known that he would die. And what did he do? After reading the Bible, after having his prayer, he got out of bed, got dressed, and went to work anyway, giving his life for the safety of his friends, community, and family. Lesser people may have called in sick after grappling with this premonition and reading Psalm 22. It seems he read what happened to Jesus, the lengths that Jesus went to the torture he endured on the cross to provide every member of the fallen race a Savior, and concluded it too might happen to him. But if Jesus did that for him, Rick concluded maybe he could do the same. Rick, could do the same for somebody else. I don't know how far he read that fateful morning. I hope he reached chapter 24. Here is a sample from that chapter, again, depicting Jesus, but this time risen from the dead, having accomplished our salvation and ascending to his Father in heaven to present himself as our Savior. Listen to the new tone in the air as we read Psalm 24. Who may ascend into the hill of the Lord? Or who may stand in his holy presence? He who has clean hands and a clean heart, a pure heart, who has not lifted up his soul to an idol nor sworn deceitfully. He shall receive blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation. And when the clean-handed, pure-hearted Jesus ascended into heaven, here is what the angels said as they welcomed him there from the grave. Lift up your heads, O ye gates. Be lifted up, you everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is this King of glory? Asks one of the lead angels, and the angelic choir responds, the Lord, strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, lift up, you everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. And the refrain is repeated. Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. What a shift from Psalm 22 to Psalm 24. Jesus had risen to life, a conqueror over evil, a conqueror over sin, and a conqueror over death. And that, my friends, is worth singing about. Rick believed that same resurrection, that same welcome into heaven awaits all whose hands are clean and whose hearts are pure. For his whole career at the sheriff's department, Rick answered the calls he was given. Sometimes I would imagine those calls came in the middle of the night, jolting him from his sleep, catapulting him into action to answer some emergency, great or small. He never didn't respond. Hold on to that thought for a moment. Rick, you see, didn't just live and work here among us. He lived and worked among us with heaven in view. He was a believer in Jesus. He served his community. He honored his family. He blessed us all as if he were doing it for Jesus. His hands, Rick's hands, were clean. His heart was pure. Like Jesus, he died, and the promise to Rick on the morning of his shooting was, like Jesus, he too would rise again. One day, and I believe that day is coming very soon, he will hear another call, not over the radio, but a call from heaven itself. The Bible describes that call to be like the voice of an archangel, a trumpet blast. When the voice of Jesus pierces the darkness, jolts Rick and all who believe out of his deadly slumber, catapult him into action, not to an emergency, but into a world where all emergencies have ended. On that day, Deputy Sheriff Sergeant Rick Lopez of the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office will be very much alive, reunited with his family, and completely out of a job. Right? Evil has been vanquished. It will never again arise its ugly head. So Rick, I guess it's back to Safeway for you. Metaphorically, of course. For the rest of us today, you find yourself in the gloom of the 22nd Psalm. You feel the hurt, you feel the sting of death, you feel like your very bones are melting within you with sorrow and grief, and that is totally okay. It's understandable. We have a Rick-sized hole in our heart. But give yourself permission. Excuse me. That's the reminder I'm supposed to wind things up. Give yourself permission to read further into the story. You can see, if you get to chapter 24, and I believe Rick did, you can see how it ends, and it's not sad. In fact, as intense as our sorrow is today, and our sadness here today in our Psalm 22, so will be the intensity of our joy on that day when Jesus restores Rick to us all. While the enemy today has stood up, stuck out his chest, lifted his fist to the air in proudful triumph, shaking it in the air and declaring to the watching world, "See what I have done." Psalm 24 tells us that Jesus too is going to stand up, stick out his chest in triumph, and declare to a watching universe, "Now, see what I can do." I put my hope in that promise. I hope you will too. Jesus is going to raise those clean hands of his. He will speak from his pure heart a word over Rick and all who believe. And that word is the only one that really matters. He will raise his children to life again. He will say to Rick, "You are too good to leave in the grave forever. You are just like me, clean-handed, pure-hearted, going about doing good only, and I have raised you back to life." Today, Rick rests in the hope of that reality. I pray you will be comforted with the only one I know who can right this wrong. In the meantime, let's keep our hands clean, our hearts pure. Let's love on our spouses, love on our family, love on our community until this dark chapter is over and we can all sing together, "Who is the King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty. He is the King of glory." Like Rick, I'm rooting for the underdog. I know when we choose Jesus, we'll all win the World Series. God bless you all in this hope.
I'm Josh Burzell. I'm going to try to make it through this, but really thank everybody for coming, showing your support for our fallen brother. Many of you are here to show your support for law enforcement and support a grieving family. Arlo, he was my friend for 18 years. He was a brother, a colleague. He was a person I could trust. In so many ways, he was a mentor to me as well. We initially met when I worked at Safeway. And I know, right? There's a lot of connections with the sheriff's office and Safeway. You'd be surprised. And I remember the first time I met Arlo, immediately his smile, it was like $1 million smile. It was amazing. And we just had an immediate connection. We liked the same music, sports, fantasy football. And then I was able to get to work with him here at the sheriff's office. He went to the academy right after I did, and he left a lucrative career. I mean, he made more money at Safeway than he did here starting at the sheriff's office. And that speaks volumes for the type of person he was. He was always about trying to help everyone. And I got to work with him because we were deputies. We were part of the negotiations team in Criminal Investigations Bureau, and then lastly as patrol sergeants. And actually for almost the last 6 months, we got to work night shift together where we'd meet up and have an hour-long conversation every night. I'll miss those. It was not just words to Arlo. He was about action. If he said something, he was going to do it. He always had a smile on his face. If you were having a bad day and Arlo came around, he would have a funny little comment to make, corny joke, and then that big smile, and it would just brighten up the room and everybody would start laughing. It was amazing. When I was sitting down to start trying to think about what to say, it was easy to come up with the positive, happy memories over the years of knowing him and working with him. Whether it was our trip to Chicago to Wrigley Field, the trips to Vegas, or if it was just after a game of golf, he stopped by the house, came in, we were chatting, and he would twirl my daughters around in the kitchen, and they keep telling him, do it again, and he would keep doing it over and over again. The laughter. I'll always remember the get-together at his house. He was a legendary host, legendary. He always had amazing food, great stories to tell. He loved to be around people. He loved to have his friends and family over. It wasn't about possessions or things to him. He was about the relationships. He valued the time with his family and his friends. And talking about work, He didn't really know how bad I hated mustard. So Arlo comes back with 2 Chicago dogs, hands me one. Hey, brah, here you go. And I was like, I can't eat that. And he's looking at me, he's like, are you kidding me? I just bought this for you. And I was like, it's got mustard on it. And he's like, just wipe it off. I was like, I can't eat it. I'm not gonna eat it. He's like, you're really not going to eat a Chicago dog I bought for you in Chicago at Wrigley Field? I'm like, I'm not gonna eat it. So then he gets this little smile on his face, and I should have known right then and there what was gonna happen. And he's like, oh, okay. So 2 days later, and I can't tell the story as good as Arlo, but I'm trying. Arlo tells the story that he has this mustard packet, and I'm sleeping, and he puts it right here in my mouth. And then he jumps back into his bed with the covers and starts giggling. And of course, I wake up to mustard in my mouth, and I'm coughing and gagging. And Arlo tells the story that in between that, I'm swearing at him, and he's just laughing as hard as can be. And I'm dumping water in my mouth, trying to get it out. And at the very end of it, he's like, yeah, I guess you actually really don't like mustard. I didn't know it was that bad. I could go on and on about Arlo's amazing personality, his smile, his laughter, his never-ending impact, his positive impact on so many people, his positive impact on me and my family. But this is a testament of what one man can do, his legacy, of all these people that are coming together to support a grieving family and law enforcement. Arlo would want everybody to go out and try to help as many people as you can. Pick somebody once a week. That's what I can tell you right now, that's what Arlo would want. He would want you to go out, have a kind, giving heart, and find somebody once a week that you can help, whether it's just opening a door for somebody, volunteering at a charity. And that's what his legacy is going to be. Evil will not win. Arlo's legacy is what's going to win. Kim and Anastasia and Katrina, will always be here for you guys. I love you guys. Love you, Arlo. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. I am Yavapai County Sheriff David Rhodes, and I want to take a moment to thank all the members of the community that are here. I want to thank all the dignitaries, the law enforcement, the different public safety agencies that are represented here, our elected officials, and I want to thank retired Sheriff Scott Masher and Steve Waugh, who are here today as well. To the Lopez family, the friends of Rick's colleagues at the YCSO, and to our community, there is nothing I'm going to be able to say here today that will repair the sudden hole in our hearts. I mourn with you for this loss. I, however, will add my faith to yours, that from this tragedy there will be a triumph, and in this darkness there will be light. It is Rick's life that will overshadow and persevere. Richard Dean Rodney Lopez, also known as Rick and Arlo, was born January 28, 1971 in Denver, Colorado. His end of watch was June 28, 2022. Rick is the 12th fallen deputy in the line of duty in the history of the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office, and the first in 49 years. He is survived by his beautiful wife, Kim, his daughters, Anastasia and Katrina, his parents, Harriet and Rod, and his brother, Josh, who would say he was his best friend. As you heard, Rick began a career working at Safeway early in life, and after 21 years had achieved a well-paid position in management, much more well-paid than being a sheriff's deputy at the time. But that wasn't enough. He wanted something more in his life. He wanted a purpose-filled life. And in 2008, Rick decided he wanted to fulfill his lifelong goal and become a deputy sheriff. He began his career at the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office on January 17, 2008. During the next 14 years, Rick would serve many roles, including as a negotiator on the SWAT team, which he was very well known for. Field training officer, he was a detective in our criminal investigations, investigated major crimes, crimes against people, violent crime. He was a narcotics detective, and he was promoted to sergeant in 2018. Rick has a long list of professional accomplishments, but it's by far overshadowed by his community accomplishments. Many of these accomplishments have been come to known only since his passing. So many stories that we never knew because he never shared them about things that he did for people, but those people have come forward and told us these stories. Rick was an irreplaceable member of the YCSO. Kim, Katrina, Anastasia, I am so sorry. I was unable to prevent this. Rick received many citizen accommodations for the manner in which he treated people. As you heard, he used humor to diffuse tense situations. And people could sense that he genuinely cared. He was well known as a calming force and very level-headed. Rick cared about children. He never missed shop with a cop. And since his passing, the stories that I can tell you about Rick would fill an entire day. But you know, when I met him, I didn't know him. We met on the side of a road in the middle of the night, and he was just barely off of field training. He was so excited to be there. I had been working in this business for like 15 years at that point, and we were almost the same age, and he was acting like a rookie, like I did when I was 21. He was so excited. He had no regrets. And there's a story about, so many stories about Shop with a Cop. The little boy with the two siblings, and the kid got drawn, but his siblings didn't, and Rick learned that they were being cared for by their grandparents, and their grandparents, you know, they didn't have means for a Christmas, and he made sure, along with Kim, that the whole family got a Christmas. They bought presents for everybody. His little boy, one Shop with a Cop, didn't show up. So they chased him down at his house, and his caretaker, his uncle, did not bring him. But they made sure that he got picked up. You know, there was a broken down mom with small children there in Chino Valley, and he came upon him in a call for service, and he went home. They were from Tuba City, and their car was broke down. They didn't have a ride. He went home and got his personal car and drove them all the way to Tuba City. Kim did tell me, though, he routinely overspent on Shop with a Cop. There was, the donor's limit was no boundary for Rick. Whatever those kids wanted, they got. When we were spending time together at the Lopez house this week, I was struck by, in his man cave, he had a framed Constitution, Bill of Rights, and Declaration of Independence. And the Constitution and the office of sheriff, law enforcement, the rule of law meant so much to him. And that's why he was here. Collage of family pictures that all just showed him doing all the things that he loved to do with his family. And for reasons unknown to me, a diehard Chicago Cubs fan. He had a framed Rhino Sandberg jersey. I asked her, why the Chicago Cubs? She said, well, you know, when we're kids, WGN was the only channel on cable. That was the only team you could see. But I seem to remember being able to get TBS and seeing the Atlanta Braves as well, so. He had a Terrell Davis Denver Broncos jersey that still had blood and spit and sweat on it. It was taken right off of the player's back when Kim was insistent to get that gift from him because this was so important to him and that jersey wasn't available. You heard from Sergeant Brazel about how he treated the people that worked for him here. But he was a hero. But not in the way that you see, not in the way that we look for on television, not in the way you look for in the movies. But he was somebody's hero every day. The scriptures tell us in the book of Matthew, so when you give to the needy, do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honored by men. Truly, I tell you, they already have their full reward. Rick fully understood these words and lived by them, never seeking favor for his sacrifice. This is why this hurts so much for the community and for all of us, because Rick was a good guy. People loved him. Rick went to work last Tuesday like normal, like all first responders do, not knowing that would be his end of watch. None of us ever will. His family certainly didn't know. But in a matter of seconds, many lives were forever changed. But that's the risk we take. That's the risk our families take. And all first responders, no matter what role you play, whether it's the sheriff, the police department, fire, detention, or medics, they choose this life of sacrifice because it's a calling to something greater than ourselves. It's our duty, it's our honor, and it is our privilege to serve this way. We do it for many reasons, but we do it for love of country. You see, everything we know about our way of life in America requires the public to be safe. It requires first responders to answer the call, to respond quickly, and work tirelessly to enforce the rule of law. It requires our 911 operators to answer the phone, to be patient, calm, and decisive in the face of stress and at times extreme heartbreak, like Tuesday. And when the bullet of a cold-blooded murderer ended Rick's life, public safety agencies from all over answered the call. Many of you in this room rushed to the scene to try to save him at grave risk to yourselves. You didn't know the location of the shooter, and you didn't know what he was armed with. But I knew you would do it because I know you, and I know your hearts. Many more responded to eventually end this incident peacefully without any more officers or deputies being hurt, and I've never been more proud of a group of people in my life. Rick would have been as well. The response to this tragedy has been overwhelming, and on behalf of myself, my wife April, this agency, Kim, and the Lopez family, we're so incredibly grateful. So as I was considering all the lessons in life that we learned from Arlo, the lessons in his death are even more profound. You see, Rick understood his unique position in the community. He was keenly aware of this undeniable truth, and that is this: ours is the business of people. Ours is the business of leadership. The weight, power, and influence that comes with the badge he wore and that all of you wear, the patch on his shoulder and the flag on his chest was not lost on him. He could see the sparkle in a child's eye looking up to him, and he went out of his way to use it for good and for their own benefit. And he built relationships and created influence one step at a time. And through this, through his life, he taught us, if we're listening and we're paying attention, he taught us that we are servants of the community. They are not servants of us. Our authority and influence is an extension of the community. They must trust us, and we must trust them. Without their approval, we have no authority. Relationships are built every day, piece by piece. And the smallest acts of random kindness sometimes have the biggest impact that you will never know. He taught us to love what we do, to build people up and not tear them down. He taught us to love our families and make time for them, and he taught us to love and not hate. He taught us to be humble. During the procession back from Phoenix, we're driving and it's pouring rain, and there are a few thousand people lining the streets in the pouring rain with their flags, with their families out there to pay respect. And Kim told me Rick would be so incredibly embarrassed by all of that. He would be embarrassed by all of this because he never sought favor. He taught us a purpose-driven life is a life well lived. The community are the police, and the police are the community. And he taught us to love America. Faith, family, and friends were the most important things to him. And to approach life with clear eyes and an open heart. And finally, he taught us this: children, and this is important to remember, children often see the men and women in uniform with a view that is undimmed by the cynicism of adults that we often take for granted. They expect us to be fair. They expect us to be kind. They expect us to be authoritative. They expect us to be the protectors. They expect us to be the good guys. And in that lies an opportunity to change their lives, to lead them, to shape their view of the world and our beloved country. And Rick knew this, and he knew that they are the future of this nation and their communities. Be kind without expectation in return. And Rick will never know the many people he touched, but he didn't need to know because he had faith that he was doing the right thing. He did it and he let it go without any expectation. I believe that Rick, Arlo, would implore all of us to live up to those lofty standards as we go forward. Remember his life. Not waste a single opportunity, and do everything we can to live up to the beliefs our children have in us, to be as great as they think we are. We do not have control over what has happened here. We do not have control over what has happened to Rick, but we do have control over how we respond. Rick Lopez lived and died a proud father, husband, community servant, and a proud American. May God bless Rick Lopez and the heroes we've lost, and love and watch over their survivors, and may He bless the United States of America. Thank you.
But I know several things about Arlo. One, he loved his family and his friends. He loved to serve the community of Yavapai County. He loved doing the job. And most of all, I know that if anybody needed help, he would come running.
Something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. So take the photographs and still frames in your mind, hanging on a shelf in
after our prayer. Please remain seated for some closing remarks. But join me, please, if you would. Our Father in heaven, I know
Present! Arm! Order! Order! Rifle Team Commander, prepare to fire 3 volleys.
Sam 13. Sam 13. Sam 13. All units, no response from Sam 13. Stand by for tones. This is the final call for Sergeant Rick Lopez. Our brother Arlo was fatally shot while giving his life for the communities of Yavapai County with courage and valor. We thank you for your dedication, loyalty, and 14 years of admirable, selfless service. You have made us proud and will never be forgotten. All units stand by for a moment of silence. Sergeant Lopez, your legacy and your family will forever live in our hearts. Sam 13, you are clear to check 10-7. Rest easy, sir. We have the watch from here.
Honor guard, officers, deputies, and all uniformed personnel. Attention! Hot! Present arms. Dismissed! Check, 1, 2, check, mic, check. This is yours? What was that update?
That's Kristen with Weiss.
Oh.
Weiss CSR. Talking about Rhodes.
We'll let you guys know. We'll probably be on Facebook Live for this.
Okay.
We got an hour till deadline, an hour till show.
Oh, she just came over. He's just gonna decompress a little bit because that was dark, and then he'll be over. He's just gonna decompress a little bit because that's locked. And he'll be over here.
The family's still here.
Yeah, I'm sure he is.
Yep. Just gotta stick. It's all going with stir to it. Oh, wait, guys, I'm sorry. I just my job. Check 1, 2, check. Who's going over to the sheriff? Huh? Who's going over here? The sheriff's supposed to. We got to add a stop for him for the floor. We were talking already. Check. sitting behind the counter, usually you're wearing flip-flops and shorts underneath. Funny when told everybody pulls out their phone. What gets me is I get the spam calls. I get the spam calls.
You do me a huge favor, so you hold my
Hi everyone. Like I said, I bring the shirt to you, but I'll just do a few minutes because it's been, as you can imagine, a very, very long day for him. So
Thank you for being here. Yes, I remember you from the cold cases. Yes. Check, check, check.
I hate to see you on these videos,
Check 1, 2, check 1,
thank
2.
you for being here and doing this.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks for covering it and honoring law enforcement and Sergeant Lopez. And,
You guys ready? Are you guys okay? Okay.
Maybe a half step forward, closer to the mic.
The first thing that I would say is that I'm truly humbled, honored, and grateful for the tremendous community turnout, the tremendous turnout of law enforcement and public safety. Sergeant Rick Lopez was truly a one of a kind. He was a community servant in every sense of the word, and this is a tremendous and tragic loss for his family, for law enforcement, for our agency, the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office. We're very blessed that we have not had this type of situation. We've not lost a deputy in the line of duty in 49 years until last week. And so, and this is what people do. They come together in times like this. The community law enforcement, they need to come together in times like this, and they have. And it's as I said, and I truly believe this, that ours, law enforcement, public safety, it's the business of people. And you can see that Sergeant Lopez touched a lot of people. And so we're just very grateful for the community support. I'm desperately sorry and grieving with Kim Lopez and their daughters, Anastasia and Katrina. I wish that there was more that we could do. And I do thank all of you for being here today and covering this and sharing this story. I will say that we really have to have a conversation. There's too much violence, particularly against law enforcement, and it has got to stop. And that's a conversation for another day. But I truly believe that.
You spoke so fondly of your friend, Sergeant Rick Lopez, inside. What were you thinking during that moment when you had to give words?
You know, I wanted to honor him and remember him, and tell everybody who didn't know him like I did who he was. That's what I wanted.
Beloved man of faith, lover
Yes.
of Cubs baseball, and he brought joy to so many people.
He did, and I wanted, the message to be to all law enforcement that, you can, this is a business about, we're helping people, and there's tiny little opportunities to do that, and Rick never missed those.
What does that say about Rick, that he worked at Safeway as a manager? You mentioned, or someone mentioned that he had a pretty good job, getting paid pretty nicely. He took a pay cut to become a sheriff's deputy for the county.
Yes, and he told me how much it was. I won't tell you guys, but it was a lot. But he was glad to do it because the work and the purpose and the calling that he felt was what was most important. And all jobs are important. This country doesn't function without everybody doing their part. But he was so compelled and convicted to come and serve that he left financial rewards to come and do that. And I think that just says everything about him. And of course, Kim supported him in doing that, which is amazing.
If you could, what is the legacy you think that Sergeant Lopez will leave behind?
The legacy is the way that he treated people. he did this job the right way. He looked to de-escalate. He looked to work with people. He looked to help people. Yes, there's accountability. He enforced the law. He held people accountable. That's part of it. But why he was so successful is because he gained community trust all the other times that he was out there when he wasn't having to make arrests or do things like that. And that's really the legacy. And that's the message, I think, for law enforcement, is that we, every day, it's a trust-building process.
Sheriff, what was it like last week when you found out that you had a law enforcement officer, first time in 49 years, that was killed in the line of duty, and then realizing it was Rick Lopez?
Well, it was really tough, you know. As I mentioned, we were at the National Sheriff's Conference in Kansas City, and we're trying to manage the situation, and a lot of fear went into it, mainly because we didn't know where this shooter was, and we didn't know what kind of weapon that he had. But I knew that the deputies and the DPS troopers, everybody was going to rush into that scene, and they were going to try to save him at great peril to themselves. And that was the thing that scared me the most.